Toynbee Hall, Matt Dronfield.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for spending the morning with us. It's brilliant to have so many, and what a packed room it is, to mark our 20 years as debt-free advice. That film encapsulates something that's really important about our partnership. It's never, ever stood still. It's changed because London has changed, because people's lives have changed, and because the barriers that people face when they need our help have changed as well. Now, today is about marking 20 years properly, but it's also about being honest about what those 20 years have taught us. 20 years matters because this work has endured, right? Through the financial crisis, through austerity, through welfare reform, through the pandemic, the list goes on, and that cost of living crisis feels like it's never ending. But throughout all of that, our purpose has stayed consistent, to make sure that people facing debt and money worries can access free and independent, trusted advice right at the moment when they need it. I want to start today by saying thank you, and there's going to be lots of thank yous throughout today. Thank you to our partner organisations across London and beyond who bring that local trust, local knowledge, and enormous amount of commitment to the work we do every day. Thank you to the Money and Pension Service, whose support has enabled this partnership to grow, to adapt, and to continue to reach more people across London and beyond. Thank you to our funders, supporters, collaborators from local government, health, justice, housing, and the wider voluntary sector. And we're so pleased you're able to join us. And thank you to our sponsors for today, Twilio as our technology supporter, and Post-Remote IT and Policy and Practice supporting our refreshments. Trust me, events like this do not happen without our sponsor support. And their support means that we can mark this milestone properly while keeping our resources focused right where they matter most, on that frontline delivery. Just look around the room today. We've got funders, we've got policymakers, local authority colleagues, government departments, healthcare partners, frontline workers, advice charities, sector leaders, journalists and supporters, the list goes on. And that mix today really, really matters because debt and money worries don't sit neatly in one little system. They cut across housing, health, work, benefits, justice, family and mental health altogether. And that means our response can't sit inside one organisation either. Over the last year, I've had the privilege of visiting Seoul and Washington, DC to meet our peers working on many of the same issues that we're discussing today. Different countries, different systems, different contexts, but many of the same questions. How do people access trusted help when they're under financial pressure? How do services respond before crisis point? And also, how do we build systems that are practical, human, and trusted? And as part of that work, we co-founded the Global Alliance of Credit Counselling Services in 2024. And I'm genuinely delighted that colleagues from the CCRS in Korea have joined us here today. Thank you so much for coming. What we're sharing today is a London story, but it's also part of a much wider conversation about how societies respond to money worries, debt, and financial pressure. I've had the privilege of leading the service since 2019, and since then the service has been tested repeatedly by that pandemic, the cost of living crisis, and sustained pressures on clients, advisors, and partner organisations. But the greatest privilege has been learning and listening from advisors. If you want to understand what debt and money worries really look like, you have to listen to the people having those conversations every single day. Advisors see the person that has waited far too long before having the confidence to ask for help. The parent that's trying to keep the rent paid and the lights on. The person who is in work but still can't make the numbers add up at the end of the month. The person who's got health, who's changed, and whose income has dropped, and whose debt has quietly built up over time. Our advisors see the shame carry into that advice session, but they also see the relief when they realise that they're not being judged. Debt advice is technical, right? Really technical. It's regulated advice and it demands accuracy and professional skill. But it's also deeply human. It's about listening. It's about building trust. And it's about helping someone feel that their situation can be understood and that there actually is a way forward. One of the reasons our partnership has lasted for 20 years is that it's continued to welcome new organisations and new expertise into new local relationships. Now, Citizens Advice Wandsworth has joined our partnership just in the last 12 months, and they bring that deep local trust, a strong connection of their community, and a clear understanding of what people need from advice services on the ground. I'm really pleased that Jeremy, the Chief Executive of Citizens Advice Wandsworth, is with us today. I've asked Jeremy to share what it's been like to join Debt-Free Advice over the last 12 months and what the partnership model enables locally. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thank you, Matt, for asking me to speak today a little bit earlier in the session. I thought I might be speaking, so why did we join? So first of all, I'll tell you a little bit about Citizens Advice Wandsworth, why I'm here. So Wandsworth is an area, I think, part of London, which is often looked at as being one of the more prosperous parts of London. And I think one of the things that those of us in areas like that know is that that really masks a lot of things going on. And as well as being one of the more prosperous boroughs in London, it's also one of the most unequal, right? There are people living in deep poverty, as there are across the city. And, you know, we're there working with them for families who haven't got enough food to eat, who can't heat their houses, who are living, at times on the streets. And we're out there doing that work along with colleagues around the city. Our past in terms of debt work is that we'd stepped away from doing a lot of debt work because there were partnerships like this and we were referring people onwards. But we couldn't always do that. And when the opportunity came up at the beginning of last year for us, we have a very close working relationship with Citizens Advice Croydon. Claire's also in the room here. And when the opportunity came us for just to take potentially 2 new debt-free advice money advisors and step into that space, I thought, I don't know if I want to take on 2. And I think Claire may have thought the same. So we took on 1 debt advisor each early last year. Had to step into something that was quite different to the sort of work that we had been doing before. We are very, very much in the community. One of the things that we're quite a little bit known for in Wandsworth is Advice First Aid, where we work directly with local community groups to give them some of the skills they need to be able to support people firsthand, the people that they know, but then also to kind of send them on to more specialist services at the point that they need to do that. And that's something that's been taken on across London, and it really works. We see that in terms of the people we support. They're the people that we want to see, the people most in need. And we see that in them saying that they've got something out of the service. 90-odd% of people saying they've made some progress with their problems. So we came into the Debt-Free Advice Partnership. Check the back of my hand. Why? Okay, we're on to the challenges about that. So we picked up something that was... So I've got this system, right? I remember to do things or I don't. If it starts to get important, I write them down. If it's really, really important, I write them on the back of my hand. So just to go through it. Right, so the challenges that we had, we had to step into a space which was very different to the sort of work we'd been doing. We had to get people on board for quite high challenging targets and to get them trained up to make sure that they had the support. We didn't have, we had new recruits to do that, but our managers within the service had to pick that up. So it stretched our infrastructure. But it's important because in southwest London in particular, there's a bit of a dearth of debt advice, really. And as Matt was saying, people want to see somebody. They want to meet somebody they know. They want to sit down with somebody. So we said, look, let's step back into that space. It took some time to get up to speed. There was an expectation that we would be up to speed from day one. Which we knew. I don't think we quite knew what up to speed was, but we got there, right? And we worked with Amica and Andrea particularly to make sure that we really, pushed that through, and colleagues knew what they were supposed to be doing, and we've got there. We've seen a lot of people. We've seen over 500 people in the course of that year. That's nice of me, isn't it? Those 2 advisors working really hard have seen those people. They've really started to make a difference in those lives. And one of the things we found is it makes a better client journey. People don't always come in and say, I've got debt problems, or I think I'm on the wrong benefits. They say, I haven't got enough money to get through to the end of the week. What can you do about it? So it becomes part of an overall journey that we put together. And by doing that within one service down in Wandsworth or around the city, I think that really helps people to feel that they're getting the whole service at one time, that they're talking to people they know and that they trust, and that they're coming back when they've got problems. The support, look, we go out there into the community in Wandsworth, or, we're based at Battersea Library up near Clapham Junction Station. Some of you have probably been there before. And people come to us, we see them a lot. That's what we do. We do community-based advice. So we've learned a lot about some of the things that Toynbee Hall are leading the way on in terms of technology, and we're picking that up, bringing that into our service and learning from that. But we keep in mind the things that we're good at and those meeting those local people. Does anybody know what week it is this week? Yeah, it's Volunteers Week, right? So we've got 40-odd staff members down in Wandsworth. We've got 70-odd volunteers. Those volunteers give up their time to help their neighbours. They're working alongside our professional advisors, and I think that really adds something, that we've got a service where local people are supporting local people. I think that thing about feeling that sense of shame or feeling that sense of stigma, what we're able to do with that is support each other, really. So that's a benefit of it. I think joining in, learning how other people do things, I always think, if everybody in a room disagrees with me, I've at least got to go away and check my facts, right? So it's always good to be in rooms, hearing what other people are doing, learning from them, learning from colleagues at Toynbee Hall, but learning from colleagues in the other citizens' advices who've been working in this partnership for many years. And I think about it, and 20 years is a long time, right? And it's great to be making some changes and some progress. You might not think it, right? But because I know I look younger than I am, but I've been doing this kind of work for 40-odd years. And I think 40-odd years ago, I was an angry young man, wanting to see change. I'm still angry. I still think we haven't done enough. But it's by working together that we can start to see some of those changes and start to make sure that when people are saying, how come in a city like London in the 21st century, in a place like Wandsworth, I still don't have enough to eat, or I still can't pay the rent. And as long this is a part of that fight to make sure that that's not what we're saying in another 20 years' time, and certainly not in another 40 years' time.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Jeremy. Now, that local perspective is important because it's the strength of this model is not only in our scale, it's in the way it combines scale with that local trust. The service that we lead today has come a long way since 2006, when we were known as Capitalise, then quickly going to Debt-Free Advice in 2019, before arriving at our current name, Debt-Free Advice, in 2022. Now, those names tell part of the story, but what matters much more is the model that's underneath them. A model that's rooted in community-based debt advice, a model that remains face-to-face first, that people that need that most, and a model that has adapted as people's lives have changed. During the pandemic, when we needed change overnight, we opened 24 hours a day in just 48 hours' notice, working with the Mayor of London, because at that moment, access to advice just couldn't wait. Now, what we learned during that period has stayed with us since then. The permanent move to an 8 in the morning to an 8 at night, 7-day-a-week service came directly from that learning and that period. In recent years, we've built on that. Video advice kiosks, which you can see one physically here today. Please do see it. The team were here at 5 o'clock this morning, put it up. They turn referral into connection. Just last week, during Talk Money Week in November, we also launched our iOS and Android app, so people can access advice from home, and really importantly, replay that advice session at a time that's most convenient for them. Tools that support advisors to improve consistency and reduce administration. And you're going to see more of that later today. Now, all of this points in one direction, making advice easier to reach while keeping the human at the centre of that relationship. Now, that work has received external recognition over the last couple of years. In 2024, our video advice kiosks won Best Service Delivery Innovation at the Third Sector Awards. And in 2025, Debt-Free Advice won Charity Partnership of the Year, also at the Third Sector Awards. Later that year, we were also recognised by Credit Strategy for best use of technology for our kiosks and also the use of AI with advisors. Now, awards are not the purpose of the work, but they do matter. They recognise the advisors, the partners, the colleagues who have turned those ideas into actually delivery. And they show that the partnership has credibility and also momentum. They demonstrate that this model has been tested, it's been recognised, and it's used by real people in real advice situations every single day. Which brings us to why we're here this morning. Today, we are launching London's Financial Health Check, and I've got one here for my QVC moment. Someone's taken a picture. It's our new impact report and annual diagnostic of what frontline advice data tells us and about how people are coping under financial pressure. It looks at who's coming through the service, the debts they're facing, and the pressures around housing, health, work, benefits, utility, consumer credit, and also buy now, pay later, which we've been seeing that increase of. It looks at the last year, but also looks at the trends over the past 5 years as well. Most importantly, it turns the experience of thousands of Londoners into evidence that can help all of us make better decisions. Because the people who come to us advice are not just statistics in a report. They are people trying to keep a roof over their head, to manage bills, to hold work together, to hold family, dealing with pressures that is often hidden from everyone around them. But the data does help us see patterns, where the pressure is increasing and where access is failing, where people are delaying advice when they need it most, and where advice is making the biggest difference. Alongside the new report, we are also sharing public polling, which we did just last month in May. It tells us how people across the country are feeling about money, what pressures they're facing, and what stops them from seeking help. One finding that really stood out to me was that 40% of people said embarrassment or discomfort could make it harder to seek about money or debt advice. Now that matters because that shame, which we spoke about a lot this morning, is part of the access problem. Some of the people in the room will feel really familiar to this. The embarrassment, the discomfort, the not knowing where to go, the sense that things might not be serious enough just yet, that instinct to wait, to cope and carry on. And that is the central question for today. It's not simply how do we deliver more advice. The question should be, how can we make sure that advice reaches people earlier in the places that they need it most? And that question's going to run through the rest of this morning. The morning has a very simple shape: evidence, delivery, expansion, and reflection. And in a moment, Liam, our head of impact and data, will take us through London's Financial Health Check. He'll look at what the data tells us about the need, complexity, and access, and what we've seen this year, what's changed over the last 5 years, and what that tells us about the financial health of Londoners today. Now, this room brings together people who see debt and money worries from very different angles. And that mix matters because no single organisation can solve this problem alone. But together, we can make it easier for people to get help before crisis. So let's start where all good decisions just start, and that's with the evidence. What is actually happening to Londoners' financial health? Liam has led the work behind our report, and I'm delighted to invite him to the stage. Liam, over to you.
Well, thank you very much for that, Matt, and good morning, everyone. In the time it takes me to deliver this short update, around 12 people in London will sit down one-to-one with one of our advisors and begin a conversation that could change their lives. Over the past 20 years, more than 500,000 Londoners have had that conversation. What I want to do in the next 12 minutes is show you what we've learned about those conversations, about London, about debt, and about what regulated, reliable advice actually does for people. Let me start by saying what this report is and what this report is not. It is not a celebration of our activity or a list of outputs or one of those reports where we count everything that's moved and hope you're very impressed by the numbers and rows. It is a health check. It is a diagnostic, a way of looking at frontline data and the advice data and what it tells us about the financial lives of Londoners today. It draws on the experience of more than 13,000 people who came to debt-free advice in the past year, people seeking help with rent, council tax, utilities, benefits, credit enforcement, and the wider pressures that sit around debt. We have looked at the past year and across 5 years because a single year tells you what happened and a trend will tell you what is changing. And the headline is this: advice works, you'll be glad to hear. But for people who are dealing with the most complex situations, they do not usually get the advice soon enough. So let me start with impact. In the past year, debt-free advice secured £24.4 million in financial gains for our clients. Now that is the highest in our partnership's 20-year history. It is 15% higher than the previous year, and it takes our cumulative financial gains over the past 5 years to just under £100 million. Now, behind that figure is income maximisation, benefits entitlements secured, debt written off, debt solutions delivered, breathing space applications made, practical interventions that have helped stabilise people's lives. That tells us two things at once. First, the service is effective. Second, the need is deep. Because when financial gains rise like this, it does not just mean that we're doing more work, it means that people are coming to us with a significant gap in income, in entitlement, and in support. Over the year, the partnership supported more than 13,000 people, opened more than 16,000 cases, and delivered over 7,000 face-to-face appointments, a blended model built around the reality that different people need different routes into support at different points in their lives. Now, to the figure I want you to take away from this update. 62% of our clients told us they could not have managed without advice. Without our service, they would not have got there. That is a very stark finding. It tells us that for many people, advice is not a nice to have, it is part of their safety net. And when it's not there, there are very few realistic alternatives. We also asked clients what advice prevented. 36% said advice prevented a serious decline in their mental health. 33% said it prevented them getting into more debt. 26% said it prevented bailiff visits or enforcement action. 13% said it prevented eviction or losing their home. This is one of the central messages of this report. Debt advice does not just stabilise finances, it actively prevents harm. It can stop a letter becoming enforcement. It can stop arrears becoming homelessness. It can stop anxiety becoming a crisis. Which is why measuring this service by money alone will always understate its value. Behind every figure on the previous slide is a person. This is from a client in Lewisham in their own words. They helped me with my rent arrears and also submitted a statutory declaration. When I was not evicted, and now I have a repayment plan that works for me. I cannot thank them enough. This is not just a debt outcome. This is a housing outcome. This is a well-being outcome. This is a stability outcome. And for the person involved, it is almost certainly the moment when things started to feel possible again. The next thing the report tells us is that the debt landscape in London is changing. Let me show you three of the most significant shifts. The first is housing. The proportion of our clients living in temporary accommodation has doubled in the past 5 years, from under 4% to almost 8%. Temporary accommodation is not just housing status, it changes how people manage their money, whether they receive letters, whether they can stay in contact with creditors, whether their children can stay connected to the school and routine, whether someone has the privacy and the stability to deal with their finances. So when we talk about debt in this city, we have to talk about housing. The two go together. The second shift is telecoms. Telecoms and media debt has risen from 5.5% of all recorded debts to 8.5%. A small unpaid phone bill might seem like one of those less serious things, but in practice, this can be a gateway to wider exclusion. Lose a phone or internet access in 2026 and you may lose the ability to manage your universal credit. You may miss NHS appointments. You may not be able to apply for work. You may lose contact with creditors, landlords, and advisors. In a world where so much of our life is managed digitally, disconnection does not just mean losing a phone, it often means losing access to the systems that people need to stay afloat. The third shift is buy now, pay later. 5 years ago, buy now, pay later accounted for less than 0.5% of debts that we saw. This year, 5.5%. That is a structural change in the market, and it is presenting out at our door. The challenge is not unusual for the size of the individual balance. It is the fragmentation. People hold multiple balances across multiple providers. They do not have a single picture of what they owe. Each installment looks small. And because the amount looks small, people often do not recognize the risk until the collective position becomes difficult to manage. Many buy now, pay later products sit outside the Consumer Credit Act, which means fewer of the protections and fewer of the warning signs that exist for traditional credit. This is exactly why frontline data like this matters. We can see this trend forming in real time, while there's still a chance to act on it. Underneath those trends sits a deeper picture. Need is becoming more complex. A third of our clients are now classified as unfit for work. 5 years ago, that figure was a quarter. Further, 16% are job seekers, fewer than 1 in 10 are working full-time. Read those numbers carefully because they tell you something important. These are not princely people who are managing a tight budget. These are people whose health, work, and finances have all destabilized at the same time. And those findings did not arrive neatly, one at a time. They arrived together, which means our advisors are rarely working on one problem. They are working on income, on housing, on health, on employment, on benefits, on family circumstances, and then on top of all of that, debt. It is why income maximization has become one of the most important roles that we have, with over 2,100 income outcomes recorded this year. Sometimes the route out of debt is not negotiating with creditors, it is making sure that people have the income they are entitled to in the first place. The report also gives us a portrait of who is using the service. Financial pressure in London does not fit one type of person or one type of household. 58% of our clients are women. 70% are between the age of 35 and 64. 44% live alone. 20% are single parents with dependent children. One shift inside those numbers stands out. The proportion of our clients aged 17 to 24 has grown more than fivefold in 5 years, from under 1% to over 3%. That tracks with a national picture that the Money and Pension Service has found that nearly 4 in 10 people aged 18 to 24 now need debt advice, more than double the rate of adults overall. Our client base also reflects the full ethnic and linguistic diversity of this city. The point is not to reduce people into categories, it is to understand where financial pressure is showing up and design the support and the service that fits around real lives. First, need is becoming more complex. People are not arriving with isolated debt problems. Debt is woven through housing, health, work, benefits, digital access, and the cost of essentials. Second, advice works. We can see that through the financial gains, in the harm avoided, in the 91% of clients who told us that their advisor made them feel understood, and the 62% who told us they could not have managed without us. And third, access is critical because the data also tells us that people who need advice most are often the least able to reach it. Temporary accommodation, disrupted income, poor health, digital exclusion, each of these make the path to advice harder and at exactly the point when advice is most needed. If advice works, the question is no longer whether we should be doing more of it. The question is we need to make sure that it can reach people earlier, especially when they are facing the greatest barriers. That shift is documented in this report and points towards a crisis that is formed. From asking people to navigate complexity alone to embedding support where financial pressure first appears. Reaching people earlier means two things: strengthening how we deliver and strengthening where we deliver. Samaya is going to take us through the first half of that answer, and then Clara and Kate will talk you through the second part, putting that learning into practice with two significant announcements about the future of our service. Samaya, over to you.
Thank you, Liam. What Liam has just shown us is that the work is becoming more complex. People are not coming to us with one neat issue. They're coming with debt, housing pressure, health issues, disrupted income, benefit questions, enforcement action, and a lot of stress sitting behind all of that. That matters for access, but it also matters for advisors. Because if we're asking advisors to support people through more demanding situations, we also have to ask, what are we doing to support them? And of course, you cannot really have an event, a strategy, or a set of announcements these days without talking about AI. It is everywhere. Every system has an AI assistant now. But for us, this is not about chasing the latest technology trend. For us, AI means something very specific. Not artificial intelligence, advisor intelligence. That phrase is very deliberate. This isn't about replacing advisors. It's not about automated decision-making. It's not about technology giving advice to clients. The advisor remains responsible for the advice, always. This is about putting better tools around advisors so they can spend more time doing the thing only they can do, listening, building trust, applying judgment, helping someone find a way forward. For clients, it means a clearer journey into support. For advisors, it means better tools around them during sensitive conversations. For the partnership, it means stronger quality, better consistency, and more time focused on the people we are here to help. Before we look at the detail, I want to start with the principle.
Advice starts with people, not paperwork. But too often, systems get in the way of the conversation. Advisors spend valuable time collecting information, navigating administration, and switching between systems instead of focusing on the person in front of them. So we reimagined AI, not as artificial intelligence, but as advisor intelligence. First Steps helps advice begin with clarity. Before an appointment starts, clients can securely complete onboarding and provide their income and expenditure through open banking, building a clearer financial picture from a tablet in the waiting area before they sit down with their advisor. So advisors spend less time collecting information and more time understanding people. Moneypenny then works quietly alongside the advisor during the session, helping navigate complexity with confidence, supporting colleagues in real time, turning conversations into structured notes, drafted letters, and searchable transcripts automatically, helping advisors stay present in the conversation while giving teams clearer insight into confidence, engagement, and service quality. But the advisor remains responsible for the advice, always. Advisor intelligence assists the advisor. It does not replace their judgment. And the same experience continues whether someone accesses support face-to-face, through one of our video advice kiosks, or from home through our mobile app. All designed to make advice feel simpler, faster, and more human, because when technology handles the administration, advisors can focus on what matters most, listening carefully, building trust, solving problems, changing lives. That's advisor intelligence.
What you've just seen is our vision for advisor intelligence, not technology replacing advisors, not automated advice, and not AI making decisions for clients. It's about giving advisors better tools around them so they can spend less time on administration and more time helping people solve problems. You saw 2 examples in that film. First Steps, which helps people begin their journey into advice more easily, and Moneypenny, which supports advisors during and after advice sessions. Rather than talking about it in theory, we thought we'd show you, because the best way to understand advisor intelligence is to see it working in practice. This is Moneypenny. Moneypenny has 2 functions, chat and listen. Both are designed to support advisors while keeping the advisor firmly in control. We'll start with chat. Moneypenny chat works in a very familiar way. If you've used ChatGPT, Gemini, or Copilot, you'll immediately understand how it works. An advisor can ask a question during a session and receive a quick answer from trusted sources. In this example, I've asked, what is the eligibility criteria for a debt relief order? Moneypenny provides an answer and importantly shows where that information came from. Its knowledge comes from the Child Poverty Action Group Debt Advice Handbook and the National Debt Line website, and that content is refreshed regularly. This is particularly useful when training new advisors. If a trainee encounters something they're unsure about, they can discreetly check information during or between appointments and build confidence much more quickly. And because it works like a conversation, advisors can ask follow-up questions as well. The second part of Moneypenny is listen. This is all about reducing administration. At the start of a face-to-face appointment, telephone call, or video advice session, the advisor simply clicks Start Recording. Moneypenny then listens throughout the conversation in the background. The advisor continues the session as normal. Nothing changes for the client. The advisor remains focused on listening and helping. When the session ends, Moneypenny creates a complete transcript. Here you can see speaker 1 and speaker 2 clearly identified. It can recognize up to 30 participants. So if a creditor, landlord, support worker, or family member joins the conversation, they can all be captured as part of the record. The advisor can review the conversation in full and download the transcript if required. This is where advisors tell us they save the most time. Moneypenny takes that transcript and automatically creates a range of outputs. Bullet points, advice summaries, and draft case notes. Instead of starting with a blank screen after every appointment, advisors start with a structured draft that they can review and edit. Here you can see an example of the draft case notes. Moneypenny has taken the conversation and organized it into a format that mirrors the information advisors need to record. But this point is important. Moneypenny does not give advice. It does not make recommendations, and it does not replace professional judgment. The advisor must always review the content, check it is accurate, and complete anything that is missing. The responsibility for the advice remains with the advisor, always. The final feature is sentiment analysis. Moneypenny tracks 4 indicators throughout the conversation: stress, confidence, motivation, and rapport. You can see how those measures change during the appointment and identify moments where something significant happened. This helps advisors reflect on their conversations, supports coaching and quality assurance, and helps us understand what good engagement looks like in practice. Again, it doesn't replace professional judgment. It provides additional insight that advisors and managers can use to improve quality and consistency. That is Moneypenny, a practical example of advisor intelligence in action, helping advisors spend less time on administration and more time supporting people. What you've just seen is not a future concept. It's being used today. And the reason we're investing in tools like this is straightforward. As the work becomes more complex, quality has to scale with access. We cannot simply reach more people and hope the existing systems stretch far enough. We have to strengthen the model underneath. Better onboarding, better records, better support for trainees, better quality assurance, and more time focused on people. Advisor intelligence is one part of that stronger model. And that stronger model is what enables the next phase of debt-free advice. Because now we're taking it into two places where the need is acute, the barriers are real, and the timing matters. That brings my part to a close, and Clara will now continue from here.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Samaya. So, what comes next? The first thing is our work in prisons. Debt-free advice is expanding regulated debt advice into prisons, funded by the Ministry of Justice and delivered with the support of the Money and Pension Service. It builds directly on the video advice kiosk model that started in London. After 5 years operating kiosks in public and community settings, using our very own technology that we've developed using Twilio platform, our technology supporter for today. We are now taking that model into one of the places where access to advice has historically been most limited. This will make sure people can access regulated, independent debt advice whilst in custody and not just after, which is amazing. The pilot is now live across 13 prisons. Representing more than 10,000 people in prison. Financial instability is a major barrier to successful resettlement. Debt does not pause because someone is in prison. Rent arrears, council tax issues, and benefit problems can all continue. Creditor letters build up, enforcement action can move forward. For many, the first time they are able to deal with these issues is after release, and that is too late. If someone leaves custody already facing unresolved debt, housing insecurities, and financial exclusion, resettlement is harder. This is important. This is not just signposting and wishing them luck. It is an active casework. Advisors can speak to the person directly. They can assess the debt situation, contact creditors, support with breathing space, work with housing providers, public bodies and other agencies, all before the person is released. As part of the Debt-Free Advice Partnership, it also means we can support the wider household. Debt in prison can affect partners, children, parents, and the burden of tenancies and bills is picked up by the whole household. This pilot means financial issues can be identified earlier. Advisors can begin casework after release, before release, and support can continue as prison people transition back into the community. We have built specialist capacities to deliver this properly. Over the last 12 months, we have trained a dedicated team of debt advisors. They have been trained to level 3 and level 4 in debt advice and casework. We have also partnered with the amazing Switchback, a London-based charity specialised in prison resettlement and support for people leaving prison. Their model is built around skill, consistent relationship that begins in prison and after release. You're amazing. Thank you. Switchback have provided specialist training and support for the team working in prisons. This means they have a better understanding of the environment, the barriers people face, and the importance of trust before and after release, giving them specialist knowledge to deliver proper safeguarding and quality assurance. Beyond technology, it is about building a service. The technology has been adapted for the prison setting. It went through 18 months of security testing, changes and enhancements to make sure it was ready for the secure setting. What works in a community venue cannot simply be lifted and placed into a prison. One of the practical challenges in debt advice is consent. Advisors often need written authority before they can act on someone's behalf. In prison, people can only have limited correspondence in and out each month. Consent forms become a real barrier. So we have upgraded the kiosks so people can sign consent forms directly on the screen. The advisors can act more quickly and the person does not need to wait for post. The advice journey can keep on moving. We have also built in an end of call survey. People can tell us via 3 simple questions how they found the service, how they are feeling about their finances, and at the end of the conversation, which Liam, you will appreciate. It helps us evaluate and understand the impact. The principle behind this work is straightforward. Support should begin before release, not after crisis. In the reports, there are examples of what that means in practice. Evictions have been prevented and financial situations have been stabilised because advice reached them before release. We are already managing more than £600,000 of debt. This represents unresolved rent arrears, utility debts, council tax issues, credit debts, and financial pressures that could otherwise follow someone through the gate and affect their resettlement. Rather than leaving prison with problems escalating, they are leaving with a plan, support, and with a clearer route towards stability. So, the second major development is in healthcare, and I am now going to pass you to Kate.
Thanks, Clara. And I also just want to say something completely off script about Clara. Clara's amazing. She came to us. She's running our MOJ project. She leads that team. A year ago, she had never been inside a prison. Now, at multiple prisons across the country, she can literally go in, grab keys, let herself in, deliver workshops. Absolutely incredible. Can we just give her a big round of applause? We get amazing feedback. Honestly, our team is so good. You guys, I'm so excited to be talking about this next piece. Are we all still awake? Are we good? Okay, we're still good. It is raining outside, so I hope you got used to the courtyard before that happened. So we're talking about the next piece of work because in many ways, it feels like a natural extension of what we've been trying to do through debt-free advice for years. Macmillan Money More is now being delivered through the debt-free advice partnership led by Toynbee Hall, bringing specialist organizations into the model and building on everything we've learned over the last 20 years about how to make advice easier to access for everyone who needs it. We're going to be leading this service across the city for the next 3 years, and while this isn't debt advice specifically, the principles behind it are incredibly familiar to us. It's about trusted advice, meeting people where they are, and having one clear route into the support they need. It's about being able to help people when they need it. And it's about using technology in the right way, not to replace people, but to make it easier to connect them with the human support that they need. I don't know anyone who's gone through their life without having someone in their life who's been impacted by cancer. I think we can all probably relate to that in some way or another. So just imagine for a moment, it's your partner, your parent, your friend, and they've just been told that they have cancer. And in that instant, everything has now changed in their lives. Suddenly, there's appointments, there's treatment plans, there's difficult conversations, there's certainly uncertainty and fear. They're trying to process the new information that they never wanted to hear, and now they're worried about their family and how they're going to get through this next chapter in their lives. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, we go, here you go, here's a brand new job for you to take on. Can you work out what benefits you're entitled to? Can you navigate a complicated system? Can you figure out what support is available? It's not just difficult, it's completely unreasonable to ask somebody going through this to navigate all of that on their own. Nobody should have to become an expert in welfare benefits advice when they're already processing a cancer diagnosis. And yet that is the reality for thousands of people across this country. Cancer just doesn't affect your health, it affects your income, your ability to work, your security, and financial pressure will arrive whether you like it or not and whether you're ready for it or not. And that is why this service matters. I also just want to say a big thank you to the Macmillan team in the room. We have a lot of people who are hands like in there. We have some at the back of the room there that deal with our patients back there who are amazing. If we can give them a big round of applause, please. They work with patients on the daily basis. They are on the front line. They see what is happening. And they are why this service matters as well. If we can remove even just one burden at that point, we think we've done something worth doing. So what are we actually building here? What I love about this model is it's designed around real life. It's not around organizational structures or funding streams, although we love the funders. Thank you so much for being here. It's built around moments when people actually need the help. It's built around diagnosis, treatment, recovery, and for some, end of life. Because those are often the moments where people need support the most, but do not have the capacity to go searching for it themselves. So instead of expecting people to find us, we're building a model that helps us find them and get to them easier. Specialist welfare benefits advice, community-based support, central triage, and the right support at the right time, without people having to navigate multiple services on their own. One thing we've learned over the years is that there's no single perfect route into advice. Everyone is different. Lives are complicated, and what works for one person will not work for another person. Some people still want classic face-to-face support. Others would rather use the phone. Some want to speak to a trusted healthcare advocate they've already been working with and they've already been supported by. And others might be too unwell to travel anywhere. So we built the flexibility into the service from the start. Professional and self-referrals, free phone, online, face-to-face support, video advice. And the important thing isn't about how people reach us. The important thing is that they can, and when they do, the support is there, ready, and waiting for them. So as you can see, we love tech. That's no surprise. Shout out Twilio, our tech partners in this. We have the tech zone. You can see what the bedside kiosks look like out there in the little green cases. You can see the actual, what it looks like in a prison, that booth out there. We love tech. And the tech is exciting, but technology is not what excites us. The exciting bit is what the technology is allowing us to do for our clients. We've spent years developing this video advice through debt-free advice, but not because it's this clever or this new shiny thing. It's because it's accessible, and access is what matters. Distance to receiving that advice is what matters. Practical barriers actually matter. The question we've asked ourselves is simple. How do we bring expert debt advice to the point where somebody needs it? And that is the thinking behind our work. It's the thinking behind what we're doing in the prisons, and now it's the thinking behind what we are doing in healthcare settings, which we officially kicked off on Monday, June 1st this week. We went officially live. So we're very excited about that. So whether it's somebody in a Macmillan Center or somebody receiving treatment in a hospital, support is meaningless if it is not accessible. And I think most of the people in this room can agree to that point. One of the themes running through this morning has been access. And in some ways, we've been talking about access in settings that feel quite different to one another. We speak about access to people who are in prison, and we've talked about access for people affected by cancer. They're very different environments, very different challenges, but there's certain things that are very similar. And when we started looking at the barriers people face, the striking similarities were there. In both cases, people are often at a critical moment in their lives. And in both cases, accessing support is much harder than it should be. Sometimes there's physical barriers, sometimes there's practical ones, and sometimes people simply have too much going on to navigate yet another complicated system. So whether it's someone preparing for release from prison or trying to deal with debt, housing, or financial insecurity, or someone who's just received a cancer diagnosis and is still trying to process everything that comes with that, the challenge is surprisingly similar. How do we make sure support reaches people when they need it most, instead of expecting them to find us? And that is the thread that runs through all of the work that we are doing, and we are so proud to deliver. It's why we're so focused on bringing advice closer to the point of need, rather than waiting for crisis. And ultimately, that's what this comes back to. So it's about people. We know that. That's a very common charity thing. It's all about the people, but we actually mean it, you guys. It's about the people who need advice, reassurance, someone just to help them understand their options, and sometimes it's someone to hold their hand while they go through this process. People who are often facing some of the most difficult moments in their lives. And that's why technology matters, the partnerships matter, the delivery models matter, and all of those things matter because they help us reach the people we need to serve. Everything we've talked about this morning exists because of those people that we're serving, and that's why we're doing it. That's why this work matters. And that's why it's so exciting now to move into a conversation about how we make more of this possible. So, we talked a lot this morning about systems, partnerships, funding, technology, delivery models, which is all important, but none of it matters if it doesn't actually change somebody's life. And at the end of the day, success isn't a dashboard, as Liam says. It's a person getting the support they need when they need it most. The client voices belong in this conversation. We are client-led, and before we move on, we'd like to share a couple of their stories. Stories about what can happen when advice arrives at exactly the right moment. So now what we're gonna do is play a little video for you guys if you wanna have a look at this.